Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's nice to be here. And you're probably all here because you all know who I am and what I do. So I have to explain that. Some of you probably, as Roz Lowenstein told me, even remembers when I was a TV critic for the Sentinel years ago. I was a TV critic. What happened to TV or what happened to me? And then I was a local columnist, the column where Bob Morris used to do, that Mike Thomas does now. Did that for a few years, then I went into Indiana for a while, where my daughter was going to school, and then I came back. And now I'm doing the consumer column for the, last 4 years.
Real smart, you know everything.
Now, I was starting by correcting you. And actually correcting Jeb, who actually didn't make a mistake, but he made an assumption that's actually wrong, but it does go to the heart of what I do in my column. He said that, something to the effect that I'm an expert in consumer stuff, and I can help you stay out of trouble. Well, those things aren't exactly true.
They sound good.
Well, they sound good, but here's why it's not true. How many of you know the name Clark Howard?
What?
Clark Howard is a fellow in Atlanta who has a radio show, a national radio show, and he's a real consumer expert. Clark can tell you 10 different ways to things to watch out for when you're getting a mortgage or a credit card. He's wonderful. He's really, really knowledgeable. He's written a lot of books, and he's spoken in Orlando a number of times. Clark is a real expert. Now, I'm not. I'm the guy you come to if you don't pay attention to Clark. If you don't pay attention to Clark Howard, and you don't take care of yourself and be prudent and read books and read labels and read contracts and you get yourself in trouble, then that's when you come to me. Because I'm not really a consumer expert. What I am is a hitman with a column. I'm a hitman with a column is what I am. You bring to me a problem, you show, now I try not to, I try to be very forgiving about my readers' foolish mistakes. And many of the problems that come to me are a result of foolish mistakes. Some of them are simply the product of too much faith in human nature. Quite honestly, that is a big part of the problem. I would say even most of the problems that I get are a result of consumers who believe that they are dealing with people who are just as honest as they are. And I understand that, and I can even relate to that myself as a consumer, because it's terrible to go through life being a cynic. It's terrible to go through life distrusting your fellow man. And so nobody really wants to live like that. And so you try to be prudent, you try to be careful, but you let your guard down, inevitably, and you deal with people, you assume they're honest as you are, and probably most of them are, but there's a certain percentage who are not. And those are the people who will end up taking advantage of consumers. I should also say there are a number of people who are honest but just incompetent, and that's a problem too. I mean, I've dealt with some people in our home who are not dishonest but incredibly incompetent and careless, and they aren't really crooks, but they have all the attributes of a crook. These are the guys that you read about in my column all the time. I paid so-and-so to come to my home to give me an estimate for resurfacing my driveway. He gave me an estimate of $1,500, said he needed a down payment of $500. I gave him the $500, and I haven't seen him for 3 months. Okay, I call the guy. Hi, Mr. Smith. I'm so-and-so in the Sentinel. I understand that Mr. Graves gave you $500 3 months ago, down payment to repave his driveway. He hasn't heard from you since. I know, I'm really terribly sorry. Mr. Smith is such a great guy. He has such a lovely home, and I'm sorry. I meant to call him. My mother has been sick. I've been in Tampa. I had to go to Tampa to visit my mother, who's sick. She has cancer. And then I got back, my truck broke down. And I've been having trouble with my son who's in rehab. I've heard this. I can't tell you. It's amazing how many contractors and developers have a sick mother in Tampa. That is a problem of human nature, incompetence. And to a certain extent, I mean, it is magnified in Florida. Because Florida, let's face it, Florida is a land of opportunity, and that's not doesn't go, that in the good sense and the bad sense. An awful lot of people from other parts of the country who lose their jobs, they come down here, they want to get jobs, they're good workers, but an awful lot of scam artists too come down here and look at all this money and all these people. This is a very rich area for scam artists. Because you have to remember, an awful lot of people, a disproportionate number of people who live in Central Florida are new to the country, new to the state. Many of them are quite elderly. Senior, yes, thank you very much. Very senior. Now let me say, this does not mean that seniors are not, my implication is not that seniors are not competent to handle their own affairs. Here's the main problem with seniors. People like yourselves. They tend to be the ones who have the most confidence in human nature because they grew up that way. They grew up in a different world. They grew up in a world in a different time and a different place where things were done on the back of a paper bag at the store. Things were done on a handshake. Almost all business was done with small businesses, not the big boxes. And common civility and courtesy and honesty were simply more prevalent than they are today. Hate to say it. Every generation, I guess, looks back on the good old days, but I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and it's different here today for my kids growing up than it was there. It just is. I've had people tell me that occasionally they'll write and they'll say, I was going to write to you. I had this problem with such and such company. I went to them and I just mentioned your name, and they said, okay, fine, we'll take care of it. And so, now I don't know if that's necessarily true, but if it is true, if that ever does happen, that means that the column can have a residual beneficial effect. Without me dealing with things general. If been doing it long enough in the community now that a lot of businesses know about me in the column, and that maybe it has had a beneficial effect on some businesses deciding, we don't want to ever have to hear from this guy. The boss could have said, look, see this column here, see this company that's got burned. I don't ever want to let this happen in our company. I never want to hear from this guy. So if some problem like this comes into our company, take care of it. I don't want to have to deal with this guy in the paper. The best luck I ever had with an insurance company involved a woman who worked at Martin Marietta, and she lost a leg somehow, and she had gotten a prosthesis, for her leg, but the insurance company gave her an old model. Not exactly Long John Silver, but it was an old model. And it was really not adequate or satisfactory. She wanted the most recent thing, which was called a C something or other, and C3 or R2D2 or something. And so she went to them, and they refused to pay for the updated prosthesis. And so she came to me, and it was a $24,000 item. And so what I did is I didn't go to the insurance company. I went to Martin Marietta because it's a local company. They know who I am, and I went to them and I said, is it really true that one of your employees, told them the story? And I said, is there any way this can be fixed? And I'm going to be writing about this, and, can you look into it? And so they came back sometime later and they said, it's been taken care of. The insurance company is going to give her the updated leg. So that was a $24,000 item, and that was pretty good success with the insurance company. Obviously, Martin Marietta leaned on the insurance carrier and said, look, we're going to look horrible here, in our community here. You've got to help this lady out. This is something I like to read at these kinds of meetings. Some of you may have heard some of these already. I don't think I've ever used them in my column, but there's certain things that consumers shouldn't do. They're resolutions and resolutions for consumers. Here's some of them. It says, resolve never to buy golf clubs, bedroom slippers, or underwear by mail. Don't tell me you did it.
No, I
Oh, okay. But you can go to Walmart or Kmart and get bedroom slippers, or underwear too is another one. And actually once I actually did track down a pair of bedroom slippers that had not been delivered. It was some guy had a post office box in Upper New York State, and he didn't even live he lived in Canada. And he would come to the post office in Lake Champlain, probably he'd come to Lake Champlain once a week to get his mail and probably sacks of flour and lard and bacon, and his mail. And this is the guy who was sending this stuff out. I couldn't believe it. And so don't do that. Don't order underwear or bedroom slippers by mail, and also golf clubs. It happened a lot, but these people who buy golf clubs from California, to test them, and if you can return them. If you don't like them, you can return them. Well, just try returning golf clubs by mail. If you don't like them, I've had very little luck with those. Those poor people usually end up getting shafted. But okay, resolve never to have serious auto repairs done at a place that specializes in 10-minute oil changes. This happens more than you would think. They say, oh, by the way, sir, we're just changing your oil, and we noticed that you need blank. Big mistake. This shouldn't be necessary, but I tell you, it happens. So just remember, there is no such thing as a free 4-day, 3-night trip to the Bahamas. It's just never free. It's not really, really free. It's not free. People have written to me and they say, I got a free 4-day, 3-night trip to the Bahamas. Once I got there, I found I owed this, and this, and the hotel was horrible. There were cockroaches, and we ended up spending $800 for this free trip. They should know better. There is no such thing. But people, again, they shut their brains down, and they think they can get something for nothing. Never believe anybody who says they will clean your carpets for $6.95 per room. You've seen that, haven't you? You've seen it. $6.95 a room. Okay. Woman calls one of those places. Come out. I got 4 rooms. I want them done. Let's see. That'll be $28. By the time they leave, it's $489 for deodorizer and this treatment and that treatment, and I've dealt with those countless times. Not had a whole lot of luck with those people because very often they sign a contract and it's all right there. And these people, the people who put up signs like that, like on light poles and telephone poles, $6.95 a room, guess what? They don't have a conscience. If I call and try to embarrass them or humiliate them for being horrible people, and they don't care. They don't care. Never buy something just because it comes with a rebate. Never do that. Never let that be your reason to buy something. Now, if you're going to buy something anyway, and it comes with a rebate, fine. But too many people go in and their basis for their their purchase decision is a rebate. And you know how hard it is to get a rebate back. To get a rebate, to actually, to get a check. It's very, very difficult. You have to jump through 10 different hoops and send in 5 forms of identification and your mother's DNA, and it just goes on and on and on. Sometimes readers will say to me, why don't you do a list? Why don't you put a list in your column of honest contractors or competent contractors? The thing is, I can't do that because if I do that, it'll look like an endorsement, and I can't. In my column, I cannot be endorsing any business because for obvious reasons. Now, the closest I ever came to that was doing in my column a list of, this was after the hurricanes in 2004 and all these people were being ripped off, were giving huge deposits and not getting anything. what I did do, that was the big problem, was giving a deposit and then getting no work done or very little work done. So what I did do is I compiled a list in my column, a long list of contractors, pool, driveway, screeners, plumbing, everything, of roofers who simply do not require a deposit. And I put that in because any company that does not require a deposit, is willing to do the work first, that in itself tells you something about that company. What it says is that, first of all, it tells you for sure that they're not fly-by-night rip-off artists. It also tells you that they're not leaving town next week. It also tells you that they're willing to be paid on the basis of their work. And if you don't have to pay until they're done, and I think this is acceptable, let's say they get halfway through and they say, okay, could I have, in other words, pay as you go, pay as they go. If that in itself tells you something about that company. There's no guarantee that they're going to be competent, but it does tell you that, I think it tells you something important. So that I could put that in my column. I could say, okay, these companies do not require deposits. And then people can decide for themselves on basis, on experience. They will decide whether they want to go with one of those companies. But if given a choice, given a choice between company roofer A and roofer B, both of them seem to be good companies, but one of them does not require a deposit, I'm certainly going to go with the one that does not require a deposit, because that to me is a company that's confident in its workmanship.